And we are squarely right smack dab in the middle of Call Your Shot season on the college football calendar. Now, this is not to be confused with talking season, which is right around the corner. And then right after that, you got prediction season. But Call Your Shot seasons, we'll explain a little bit more throughout the show, is essentially just what it says. You are calling your shot on specific things that you think are going to happen. Not total records at the end of the season, not who's going to win the national championship. We got time for that. We'll get there in prediction season, but today I want us to call our shot in the Southeastern Conference and some things that we strongly believe are going to happen. Welcome into the Hard Count, the People's College Football Show. It is Tuesday, June 25th, 2024. Can y'all believe we're already in June? Like, we are less than a month away from doing media days out there in Dallas for the SEC. But with that being said, this is, of course, the last June 25th, 2024 on the face of the planet. We got a ton to jump into. We have that potential conversation that we did last week around individuals in college football. We're going to run that back and talk about teams with some big potential in college football. So from individuals to teams on that side of things. Also recruiting, man. If you have been dialed into the On3 Recruits channel, then you are doing yourself a favor, because the 5-star flex with Phillip Dukes is dropping bangers. The inside scoop with Josh Newberg, again, bangers. The Wilt Fong whip around is just stocked to the brim with intel, and there's a lot of big-time official visit weekends happening. Had another big one this past weekend. We'll break down the latest on the recruiting side of things, because the summer, really June and July, is for recruiting, is what we say on this show. Julian Lewis now. Yep, you know where I'm going with this. Julian Lewis just visited Colorado this past weekend. And tell you what, man, the good folks in Boulder, man, they shot their shot. Like, say what you want about that whole fan base having a little bit more juice now with Deion Sanders being there and them attracting some new members to that fan base with Deion Sanders being there. But, like, sounds like they got after it on that official visit in terms of making their pitch to Julian Lewis. Where do things stand for him? I'm going to refer to some things that we have heard from the Wilt Fong whip around, and I'm also going to just give you my unfiltered thoughts, and not an intel piece per se, but more so where I think we need to pay attention to when it comes to the Julian Lewis sweepstakes. Worth noting, he is committed to USC. I can already hear the USC fans in the comment section. You're trying to get him to flip. You're projecting a flip. You're this. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Okay. Actually, spoiler alert here. Per Steve Wiltfong, he would lean stick with USC more than flip right now. I'll tell you what, if Steve Wiltfong has a feel for something, we would all be wise in the college football world to tail him on that feeling, but we'll see where this goes. We'll talk about that when it gets here. How do you build a roster in college football is another thing we need to discuss. Our guy, SEC Mike, from that SEC podcast, went on some local radio over the course of the last week or two and just pretty much made his thoughts known on how he believes you need to build a roster in modern college football. Spoiler, he leans very strongly towards the transfer portal and having that be a non-negotiable in how you put that roster together. So we'll unpack what he said. We'll give you our thoughts. And worth noting, too, SEC Mike, friend of the show. So we love his opinions. We actually have a conversation with him airing next week. So shout out to SEC Mike and shout out to that SEC podcast. And then we'll finish this thing out talking a little Dabo Swinney, because Dabo Swinney, man, he has been a lightning rod when it comes to conversation in the college football world. Is he doing a great job at Clemson right now? Probably leaves a little bit more to be desired by their standard they have installed over his time there, out there in Clemson. Some people think the game's passed him by. Some people think he's a great coach. Like, there's a lot of mixed opinions on Dabo Swinney. Why is that? We'll get to the heart of the division around Dabo and give you our thoughts on that topic as well. Hey, a lot going on in your world. I get it, man. It's 4th of July weekend right around the corner. 4th of July week, rather, right around the corner. You're going on vacation. You're trying to button up some last-minute things at work. Whatever you got going on, just relax, all right? We're just talking college football now for the next hour or so during the month of June, no less. How lucky are we? We're glad to have you all a part of this. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Follow me on the social channels if you have not already. Instagram and Twitter, at JD Piquel. We're not live all the time on this channel, so if something happens over the weekend or something happens late at night, whatever, like, I'm pretty likely to give you my opinion in short-form video on either of those platforms. So at JD Piquel is a great way to consume that content and also to just interact in general and hear from y'all. If you're on podcast, shouts to y'all. Subscribe to the podcast feed. We love y'all. We thank y'all for being dialed in as well. All right, let's jump right into it, man. Can't waste too much more time. Call Your Shot season is in full effect here on the Hard Count, and Call Your Shot season, as I mentioned in the intro to this live show, is not prediction season, where we're telling you who's winning the SEC, who's winning the Big Ten, who's winning the national championship, and it's not talking season. That's for media days. Call Your Shot season is more specific to teams in terms of what we think they could do at a more micro level, and probably in this space too as well. It's a little bit more specific to sides of the ball for your team, but I'm going to go through every conference here. We're starting with the big boy, starting with the SEC. We'll have the ACC on tomorrow's live show for you, but let's start with some of our shots we're calling in the SEC. How about just an overarching one when it comes to the conference as a whole? The shot we're calling right off the bat is that the SEC will have 2 Heisman finalists at that ceremony in New York, and they will have they will have the Heisman winner when it comes time for that to be awarded in New York. So let's recap it. The SEC will have 2 Heisman finalists, and they will ultimately have the Heisman Trophy winner. Now, if we look at the odds in Vegas, currently 6 of the top 10 betting favorites are from the SEC. 3 of the top 5 betting favorites are from the SEC. Now, it's no surprise. This is pretty much more or less a quarterback award, though shouts to Devontae Smith winning it in 2020. But 3 of the top 5 the SEC has when it comes to what Vegas thinks in terms of betting favorites. You got Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, and Jalen Milroe. Here's the way I see this whole thing shaking out. I'm not calling my shot for who's winning the Heisman Trophy, but when I look at who is going to be up for this award, and I think who has a chance to be in the conversation for this award, the SEC has too many good teams that will be in the national championship discussion and the college football playoff discussion, and too many good quarterbacks for them to be on the outside looking in with less than 2 finalists, and again, ultimately, I believe, to not have somebody win the award. Like Carson Beck in Georgia, I think will probably be, if not the number 1 ranked team in the country going into October in that top 3 discussion. Ole Miss and Jackson Dart, if you've watched this show, you know we are buying all the Jackson Dart stock we can find and then some. Like we are on the resale market to try and find more Jackson Dart stock. Not just because the nice lettuce out the back of the bucket, all right? It's because we also like what he does on the field, and I think he takes another big jump year 3 at Ole Miss. Jalen Milroe, I've already gone on record. I think Jalen Milroe is going to be one of those 2 Heisman finalists. I think him and Kalen DeBoer will just be, absolute magic together on the offensive side of the football. Quinn Ewers, he could be the best statistical quarterback in college football this year, his 3rd year in Steve Sarkisian's system. So we go down the line here. I haven't even mentioned Nico yet. I think he's going to have a massive year. Also worth noting, in this new era of college football, with the expanded playoff, I've said this before, I'll say it again, we are starting to, I believe, round the corner into a college football playoff and a college football world that is more quarterback-driven than ever before. Whether it be the style of play, whether it be the way these kids are getting trained at the high school level and they come into the collegiate ranks super polished, like we are now entering a world where quarterbacks mean more than they ever have. And in the Heisman Trophy discussion, what have we consistently said about that award every single October, November? We say, it's really a team award, best player on the best team. What we meant by that was a team that's in the discussion for a national championship or in the college football playoff is usually going to win the award. Now, usually is the key word there. Jaden Daniels won it last year. If I had a vote, he would have gotten my vote and then some. But with the expanded college football playoff, what does that mean? It means more teams are going to be in that playoff discussion. And so, whereas before it might be, hey, you got 3 losses. That was the big thing with Jaden Daniels. Team had 3 losses. We're not sure how we feel about it as a college football public. Does he still have a chance to win the Heisman? If you have 2 losses going into November, heck, if you got 3 losses, you're going to be in that college football playoff discussion. Now, you may be on the outside looking in still a little bit with 3 losses, but you catch my drift. More teams in the national title discussion, in my opinion, will equate to more players in the Heisman discussion, and overall, that's going to favor the SEC. Again, I think you got your Heisman Trophy winner from the SEC, and we'll have at least 2 finalists. I might even, as we get further and further into this thing, I'm tempted to go with 3, but we'll go with 2 right now. Second shot we're calling here. It's Nico time in Knoxville. And we love to see it. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk about, a lot of fun to cover, a lot of fun to watch it all unfold. I'm here to tell you, man, Tennessee fans, last year your offense scored 30 points a game. Not bad. Tell you what, man, a lot of teams, they would give their left arm and a kicker to average 30 points a game. But I think Tennessee will average in the neighborhood in 2024 of 40 points a game. The reason why, there was so much talk last year around, well, Joe Milton just isn't going to cut it. Joe Milton's not good enough. He's not mobile enough. He misses too many throws downfield. Joe Milton this, Joe Milton that. And all that happened, all that was said. Guess what? He still led an offense that accounted for 30 points a game. Now, Josh Heupel came on this very show right around a year and a half, 2 years ago, and he told us through this screen right here that I'm looking at underneath the camera one. He said, Nico Imaliava is as talented a quarterback as I've ever coached. And so what I took that to mean is, okay, Nico's got some tools. Nico's got some juice. Again, probably as much as anybody else on that roster from what I can tell in a small sample size, and taking Josh Heupel's word for it. I'm assuming he is a physically more gifted version of what Joe Milton had under the hood. And that's not to knock Joe Milton. He's got gifts in spades. But if Nico can be more consistent for you downfield, if he can do a little bit more for you ad-libbing, they're going to score a lot of points. And I think it's also worth noting, we said this too, like the quantity of weapons that Tennessee has this year compared to what they had in 2023, I think it's night and day. So some of this isn't really Joe Milton's fault, is what we've been saying here for the better part of the last few months. Brew McCoy being healthy, that's massive. Squirrel White, Dante Thornton, Chris Brazzell, like we go down the list here. This offense under Josh Heupel is built to create matchups, built to create one-on-ones with how they spread you out, with how they make you cover every single blade of grass on the field. And so what that means is it's very difficult to get extra help over the top. And so when the play breaks down and Nico extends it from a 2.5-second play when he drops back to making it a 4.5-second play when he rolls out, it's tough to cover all of those guys for that extended period of time. And so I think that's going to make for very big numbers. Again, in the neighborhood of 40 points a game is what I'm projecting. That could be 38. I think as low as 37 is probably in the territory of where I would say, okay, that projection, that shot hit. But the Nico era is going to be a lot of fun, and we're calling our shot for Tennessee to average in the neighborhood of 40 points a game in 2024. Very, very similar to the 2022 vibes that the good folks out there in Knoxville got to experience. And if you're watching in Knoxville today, I mean, I'm sure you're having yourself just a very enjoyable morning on the heels of a national championship in college baseball. Here's another shot we're going to call, and we've called this shot before. We'll do it one more time for this segment. Florida is going to make a bowl game. I'm going to go ahead and project they get to 7 wins. That's not an official prediction, but I'm saying they're in the range of 7 wins. And Billy Napier is the head coach this time next year. And the reason for that being, I've said it many times, I think Graham Mertz is extremely slept on when it comes to the quarterback national picture. I think that when you look at their schedule, that gets a lot of the hype, that gets a lot of the excitement. And say, oh, they got to play Georgia, they got to play Texas, they got to play, insert X, Y, and Z team, because their November is absolutely brutal. But let's not confuse schedule difficulty for roster deficiency. Because last year's 5-7 operation, yeah, they had some issues. A lot of those guys that were talented last year come back. And also on the back end, I've said this many times, that secondary got a lot older and a lot more experienced, which is going to help them. I'll say this too, I think they catch somebody in November. Now, who is that going to be in November? I have no idea. If I knew right now, I'd put down money on whatever that future is. But I think Billy Napier has a roster that is in position to be a lot more competitive than some people want to believe. And so I think 7 wins, the right-looking 7-5, will allow him to keep his job. And again, I think they have some kind of billboard win that allows them to create some excitement for 2025. And Billy Napier is your head coach going into next season. Here's a fun one. Texas and Texas A&M. That's one we talked about a lot. That's a game that we're going to talk about a lot all the way up until it happens, because it's a rivalry we have been deprived of as college football fans. Nice little realignment gift, little alley-oop. Say, here you go. Here's that rivalry back. I think that game is played with a college football playoff spot on the line for somebody. Now, conventional wisdom would tell you Texas has a very good chance to make the college football playoff, according to Las Vegas. Who's to say Texas isn't 10-1 rolling into that spot in College Station. It's a raucous atmosphere. 10-2, if it's Texas, is probably making the college football playoff, I have to imagine, based on, depending a little bit on how that, how that one loss would look, or those two losses would look, rather. Who's to say that Texas A&M isn't 9-2 at that spot? Now, I'm not predicting it, but you look at Vegas, Texas A&M has plus 290 odds to make the college football playoff. Now, that sounds like a little bit of a longer shot until you compare it with the other teams that they are stacked up against with similar odds. Like, the only team in the Big 12 with better odds to make the college football playoff than Texas A&M is Utah. That's it. And even Utah and A&M have similar odds. Like, A&M has better odds than Kansas State. A&M has better odds than Arizona. A&M has better odds than Oklahoma State. Like, fill in the blank. A&M, according to Vegas, is saying, hey, just keep an eye on A&M. Just keep an eye on the Aggies. I know that people want to talk about the 7-5 and the Jimbo Fisher buyout and crack jokes, but, like, if we get this game and it's a spot where A&M has a chance to make the college football playoff, that would be absolutely magical. Just chef's kiss. Now, we are sort of hedging our bet a little bit by saying anyone will have a chance to make the college football playoff based on this game. So, Texas, again, we feel decently confident they will be a college football playoff team. So any way you slice it, that's going to be a fun one. But the stakes, if it is for college football playoff berth for A&M, and it's at home at Kyle Field, cinematic in every single sense. Now here's a broader shot we're calling, and it comes to the Georgia Bulldogs. Last one for you here in the SEC. We've seen Georgia, especially last season, sort of not sleepwalk out of the gate, but have this slow climb to reaching their best football in November and December. Now, obviously, you wish that very best game came against Alabama and Atlanta. They were dinged up. Didn't happen. It is what it is. But you saw Georgia really start to hit their stride in that last month of the season. Early in the season, saw them start slow against South Carolina. Saw them start slow against Auburn. Teams that really Georgia shouldn't have been playing around with from a roster level, we saw them struggle with, and I think large part because it took a second for them to put everything together. I'm here to tell you, Georgia, from start to finish, will be one of the best first half teams in college football, mic drop, period, the end. You say, JD, they're breaking in some new guys on defense. There's some new production that is going to have to be made up for. That's fine. Carson Beck, though, he is going from driving that offense like it was rented to driving it like he owns it. And there's that part of things. There's also the internal part of things that I don't know that we can overstate enough on this show. Kirby Smart does not have to pitch to Georgia that nobody believes in them, that they got to go and prove it every single Saturday. And I'm not ever telling you that that somehow got stale or didn't resonate for Georgia, but I do think there's something to be said for the hunger specific guys on this roster feel to make their own legacy at Georgia, for Carson Beck to win his own national championship in Athens. Because a lot of those guys were on that roster. Not a lot of those guys were starters necessarily. And so I think the hunger is there. I think the internal drive is there. And not to say it was ever lacking before, but I'm just telling you, Georgia will be on a mission. I love what they have on the offensive side of the football. As I just mentioned, from an experience standpoint, they will be in go mode from week one. Like I've said this many times, God bless Clemson. They play in the first game of the year in Atlanta. I think Clemson has a good roster. I think Georgia's just going to be on a mission, and they will be in go mode from the very first time toe meets leather in the 2024 season. So those are the shots that we're calling in the SEC. Again, 2 Heisman finalists and a Heisman winner from the SEC. Tennessee will average in the neighborhood now of 40 points a game. Florida gets to 7 wins and Billy Napier keeps his job. A&M and Texas play for a college football playoff spot for somebody. In a perfect world, I mean, just for the drama side of things, both of them, Georgia will be one of the best, if not the best, first-half team in America from the jump. So let me know what y'all think. Excited to hear from y'all on that side of things. All right, let's get to this now. Random college football player of the day. If you've been keeping up on the socials, we do this every single weekday. Today's random college football player of the day, Arkansas running back, Felix Jones. Felix Jones, during his career out there in Fayetteville, ran for right around 3,000 yards, just shy of that, rather. What I remember him most specifically for is that wild hog formation. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it was Darren McFadden at quarterback. It was Felix Jones out there at wide receiver more often than not, coming across the formation for a little jet sweep action, sometimes blocking. You also had Peyton Hillis on there. Shouts to Peyton Hillis, a former Madden cover athlete. That was a stacked backfield that Felix Jones wasn't necessarily the biggest name out of, but he was also, to his credit, like backed up Darren McFadden, but then in 2007 was an All-SEC cat, All-American cat, and was a first-round draft pick. So Felix Jones doesn't have the same name, I guess, recognition as a Darren McFadden has, because Run DMC and two-time Doak Walker Award winner and all that. Darren McFadden is his own class for sure, but Felix Jones now deserves some respect. We're giving it to him here, being our random college football player of the day on the hard count. So big shouts to Felix Jones. A little bit of caffeine for those of y'all listening on podcasts. Got to get juiced up. Again, I'm trying to give out free advertising to somebody. We had, I'll say this, 5 Hour Energy. I've frequently used that. It's not on the desk today. We have another caffeine substance that we are currently going to drink from to get us juiced up for the rest of the show. But I'm just saying, like, if you're watching this and you're a caffeine company owner, like, come and get me. To quote Odell Beckham Jr., come and get us, all right? All right, rocking and rolling. SEC Mike, friend of the program. He hosts with Cousin Shane, in my opinion, one of the best podcasts in this space, called That SEC Podcast. Pretty true to its title. It's all SEC content. They do a great job. SEC Mike went on the radio, I believe it was in Alabama, and was asked about Hugh Freeze and was asked if he's buying the hype in Auburn. And he said some things about Hugh Freeze in terms of what he believes he's going to be long-term, which is its own discussion for another time. What I really want to focus on, though, is what is the right way to build a roster? Because that was one point that SEC Mike really leaned heavily into. He was saying, listen, I think Hugh Freeze, you got to build it through the portal. The high school recruiting side of things is great, but I think nowadays in college football, to win at a high level, you got to go portal. He said that he would have liked to see Hugh Freeze go out and get himself a portal quarterback, more or less. And so that kind of got me thinking about this topic, and here's where I stand on the portal as it pertains to how you should use it. To me, using the transfer portal in high school recruiting is a lot like going out to eat versus getting groceries. Like, you can be hungry, you can need talent, you go to the portal, you go out to eat, and it solves the problem in the short term. However, you and I both understand now it's only a matter of time to where you might be hungry again in the next few hours. Now what? Got to go back to the portal. Got to go back to the restaurant. Got to go drive through Chick-fil-A. God bless them. If you recruit through the high school level consistently, well, then when you need talent, you've had this slow rhythm and flow of personnel that you've developed and put in position to be successful that you can plug and play right away. So you don't have to go to the portal. You don't have to go to the restaurant. You're in-house. You're at the pantry. You're just cooking in the kitchen. You're good to go is how I would view that. I would say this, though. I don't think SEC Mike is wrong when he talks about the need to use the portal in modern college football. I've been pretty vocal about this. I think the portal is now a tool that will either be used against you or used for you. Now, how you use the portal is a big question here because I think there's two major uses when it comes to maximizing the portal. The first use is it increases your margin for error when it comes to recruiting at the high school level. It doesn't mean you mail it in. It doesn't mean you say, oh, whatever with these evaluations, we're going to hit the portal anyway. No, you use the portal to your advantage. You go to the portal when you realize, hey, at the offensive line, we got to get better. Hey, at receiver, we got to get better. X, Y, and Z reason. We missed here. We got to be better here. Let's go to the portal and kind of patch that up and fix that. And that's a big reason why you're seeing in modern college football better rosters than ever before. Because teams are saying, okay, well, we maybe don't have a deficiency here, but we have an opportunity to get better here. Let's go out and get that top wide receiver, that top edge rusher, that top X, Y, and Z player to really up our talent level even more. That's another reason why I think you have to use the portal. Because we're in a day and age now where if you don't use the portal and you're having to deal with that greater or rather less margin for error, your opponent is able to win with a 70 to 75% hit rate at the high school level because they just go backdoor with the portal and they go fix their roster. Whereas if you're not using the portal, you have to shoot at like a 90, 95% hit rate to maximize your roster talent and be able to compete with the teams that are using the portal, if that makes sense. So that's the first, I think, use for the portal. Increase your margin for error at the high school level. The second use, and this is one that I think Colorado did a great job of over the course of the last season, really, with Coach Prime, you jumpstart your roster. Like, it's no secret, man. Like, Colorado was a one-win football team when Deion Sanders showed up. There's a lot of talk around, well, they only won 4 games. And I've said that on this show. I think they've got a long way to go still on that roster. That's my opinion. But at the exact same time, it would be foolish to walk in there as a head coach wherever you are and see a roster that won 1 game the season before or whatever that number is that is not up to par and say, okay, I can fix this. Yes, you can fix it, but how many wins is coaching really worth? And when I say coaching, I mean like X's and O's. I mean scheme and strategy. What, 1, maybe 3 games if you have like just the savant of all savants dialing it up and your staff is just like creme de la creme? Maybe on your best year it's worth 2 to 3 wins. This is a game played by people. This is a Jimmy's and Joe's kind of game. All right? We don't have the NFL model where the talent level is right around the same for every single team. It is 5 stars beating, more often than not, 2 stars like myself, 3 stars, whatever it ends up being. And so being able to jumpstart your roster and in the matter of a cycle have better level of talent, more competitive level of talent, that's what you have to do, especially for first-year head coaches. Now, the pushback that this statement got from SEC Mike, where he says, hey, you have to build through the portal, I think that's the way that it goes these days. A lot of people push back on that in large part because of saying, well, we haven't seen it work just yet. Haven't seen it work to a national championship, that is. And I'm sitting here saying, I mean, SEC Mike's got a point in the sense that, like, we've seen major improvement through the portal. We've seen Florida State and Mike Norvell now be ACC champions. When Mike Norvell got there, that was not a roster that was ACC championship level. They brought in a Keon Coleman, brought in a Jared Verse, brought in a Braden Fisk. Could keep going down the line here. They brought in players that made them a drastically better football team. So just because we haven't seen a team portal their way to a national championship just yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen at some point in the near future. The reason why people are pushing back on the you have to build through the portal thought is because we've only seen the Georgias, the Alabamas, Michigan, the teams that don't necessarily use the portal as heavily as an Ole Miss or a Florida State win a national championship. That's the big reason. But listen now, the portal, 6 years old. Portal's fresh. Portal's new, baby. Like, I don't think any of us know with a 6-year sample size, without a shadow of a doubt, how the portal's going to be used in the next 10 years. We don't. We can pretend, we can be holier than thou and scoff at the portal and say, oh, that's not what college football is. Maybe not what college football was. Are we sure that's not where it's headed? What if Ole Miss goes out and wins a national championship this year? Then what are we saying? Yeah, that would get real uncomfortable, wouldn't it? So I'm not calling my shot there on Ole Miss, but I do think it's worth noting that Ole Miss and teams like Ole Miss, it's just going to take one of those to break through the glass ceiling and win a national title, and then we're going to reevaluate this discussion around how much you should or shouldn't lean on the portal. Again, I think that the portal is best used as a side dish and not an entree. SEC Mike, though, I think he may be owed some apologies here if a team that's portal heavy goes out and hoists some big hardware. Just my 2 cents. Should also note, too, on Auburn, I understand what SEC Mike is saying because they are leaning on the high school recruiting side of things. They also have done well through the portal, though, since he's been there. They took 21 transfers his first year there, have taken 14 so far this year. So there's still an effort to tinker with the roster. I would expect that portal effort to start to tail off, which is, I think, what SEC Mike is saying as Hugh Freeze gets further and further into his time out there in Auburn. Hey, if you're tuned in live, we love y'all. We're glad to have you all a part of this. Make sure you have subscribed to the channel. Make sure you have liked the video. Got a lot of content coming your way on this very platform, so don't miss a minute of it. Want to make sure y'all are fully locked in here as we round the corner, heading headfirst towards the college football season. It's going to be here before we know it. It is going to be here before we know it. It feels like the confetti just dropped. I understand that. But, y'all, we are like well within 100 days now of college football games being played. I think we're less than 70. It's close. Very, very close. So with that being said about the season being close, who are the teams that have big potential this college football season? We did this same segment for individuals in college football. I want us to broaden the scope a little bit and talk about teams. And when we discuss potential for teams, I think it's important for us to define that word potential. Like potential for what? Like when you go on a date with somebody, potential for them to be a great second and third date, potential for them to be a great hang on the weekend with your friends so you're not third wheeling all the time? Or is it potential for like, hey, this person could be the one? So I'm going to give you a little bit more of a specific definition for potential when it comes to these teams and potential for what they could accomplish. Tennessee, we talked about them already on this show. Tennessee, like it or not, they got the potential to crash the college football playoff party. The way that offense is set up, it is going to, I think for the most part, be able to help close the gap against teams that maybe have a higher roster talent level, teams that maybe have more 5 stars in them. The way that Josh Heupel runs this thing, we've talked about it, with tempo, with space, creates a lot of one-on-one matchups, allows his guys to go in, but guess what? He's got a quarterback now that can really make it rain on some defenses, all right? Much like Hendon Hooker. And I've said this before on this show. I'll reiterate it one more time for this segment. Josh Heupel believes that Nico Iamaleava is as talented a quarterback as he has had. Josh Heupel's had some good quarterbacks. So it's all fun and games now. It's fun that Nico's got a tricky last name to say, and he's a big-time recruit, and Tennessee, are they kind of that trendy pick to win the SEC? Could Tennessee be a team that makes the college football playoff? It's all fun and games until Tennessee drops 40 on you. And you go home with a first-round exit when you thought you had a nice little at-large bid home playoff game you were hosting. I'm just saying. They could, without a doubt, be a college football playoff team. And I think the other thing needs to be mentioned here, the offense is going to get all the headlines, and it should. But this defense, man, remember that 2022 defense? They just had issues in the back end. They really couldn't stop anybody. They were getting in drag races, it felt like, every single Saturday. Can Tennessee score 50? How many is it going to take today for Tennessee to win the football game? That defense has some juice. James Pierce, he may end up being a top 15 pick when the NFL draft rolls back around. Some questions in the secondary, sure, but I would say overall this defense is, in large part, a very big talking point for excitement in Knoxville and for their college football playoff aspirations. Miami. They have the potential, in my mind, to take back the Sunshine State. Because you look at Florida State, no question about it. Right now, that is the team in the state. Got the record to prove it, got the accolades to prove it, but they also are going into a season where they are 83rd in returning production in college football. 83rd. So the individuals that won the ACC title for them last season, on the field at least, a lot of those cats are gone. Question mark of some sorts. Not a doubt, but a question mark. Florida, same deal. It's a question mark. I think that roster is a lot better than maybe most folks nationally would like to recognize, but there's still a question mark. Miami, though, we said this before, I think the college football playoff, college football playoff too, the college football public, rather, is leaning Miami. Like, Miami is trending upward. Miami is the school with the arrow definitively pointing up because of Cam Ward, because of year 3 under Cristobal, because of what they've done on the field and how that's trended in a positive direction from total defense and total offense. All those things are pointing up at Miami. And so if Miami ends up providing proof of concept, if they end up winning the state this year, let's just say that. They win the state. Mario Cristobal has some real ammunition to take on the recruiting trail. Newsflash, he was headed on the trail regardless. That's just who he is. That's his DNA. He's going to attract top talent. If they get that proof of concept, Miami's going to be a problem. Miami is going to be a very real problem. Also, we have to say this. I think the level of offensive play they have this upcoming season is going to be really exciting to a lot of the top talent offensively at the high school level, because the brand of football is going to be exciting. It's going to be high-flying. It's going to be potent. It's going to be, I think, for the most part, pretty lethal. So Miami, if they're able to be that team in the Sunshine State, we've said this many times, if you're that team, you're going to have a chance to hoist some hardware. You're going to have a chance to win at a very, very high level because of how much talent is in the state of Florida. Penn State's a team that doesn't get enough love. Because remember last year, everyone's Penn State, trendy playoff pick. Penn State this year, they get over the hump and beat Ohio State and Michigan, and it wasn't. That's okay. But Penn State this year, I think, has a chance to rewrite the narrative around the Nittany Lions. They have potential to turn that narrative on its head. Because the current narrative is Penn State, and this is not me saying it, this is just kind of how it is right now. The narrative is that Penn State is a bronze medal team. Now, you're on the podium. That's great to be on the podium. But consistently, Penn State has fallen short of beating the big boys, Michigan and Ohio State. And we'll see where Oregon factors into this discussion in the long run. The schedule this year is built for Penn State to go 11-1. Make no mistake about it. It is built to go 11-1. On the schedule, Ohio State at home is the toughest game. That's it. That's the test. Now, we're going to see how this whole college football playoff thing shapes up, but you go 11-1 in the regular season, from where I'm standing, you should punch your ticket to the college football playoff. From where I'm standing, you should also probably punch your ticket to Indy to play for the Big Ten championship. Last time that Penn State won the Big Ten in 2016, what did we see happen? Yeah, a lot of excitement around the program and a lot of juice around James Franklin and like the public perception with the college football community. I mean, the stock drove through the roof. But on the recruiting trail, what happened? Penn State, in the following classes that really they were recruiting at that point in time, so 2018, 2019, were both top 10 classes. All right, so you want to create some momentum, want to create some juice, want to go in and close that gap from a talent level between the Michigans and Ohio States, up your dude factor, as Andy Staples would say. That's how you do it. That is how you do it. Go win the Big Ten, get a first-round bye in the college football playoff, and all of a sudden, a lot of 4- or 5-star cats are saying, wait a second, Penn State's doing something out there. Yeah, maybe I want to go and be a part of that. That's how Penn State can be the team in the Big Ten. I know it sounds a little bit out there right now because we're all talking about Ohio State and Oregon. I'm about to talk about Oregon here in a second too, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. You want to turn the narrative. It starts with this year. It starts with this path that Penn State has in front of them. That'll be a lot of fun. Now, Ole Miss, speaking of rewriting narratives and changing optics, we talked about it last segment. Ole Miss has the potential to reinvent how we all view roster building. Over the last 3 years, Ole Miss has taken 65 total transfers, including some guys like, Jackson Dart, who I think has a really good shot to be in that Heisman conversation this year. We're very big Jackson Darty fans, if you can't tell on this show. Trey Harris, who pretty much did whatever he wanted last year out wide for Ole Miss. He was a stud. You bring in Juice Wells this cycle to up your passing attack even further, one of the top receivers in the SEC from a couple years ago from South Carolina. Ole Miss on the high school recruiting level will recruit in the 20s, right? Like sometimes high teens, low 20s. It's not bad. Not bad at all. I think for a lot of schools, that would be like the creme de la creme. That'd be their best year. So why is Ole Miss in this discussion being in the college football playoff? Because typically you don't recruit in the 20s and find yourself in that playoff discussion because of what they do via the portal. And so, like we just said last segment, if Ole Miss goes on a deep run in the playoff, let's say Ole Miss plays for a national title. Forget win the whole thing. They just prove that they are squarely in that discussion to compete for hardware at the highest level. That's going to reinvent how we look at the portal. It's going to reinvent the attention that we give to the portal, I think. And the attention is already massive, but what I mean to say is right now there's this thought that you cannot portal your way to big-time success in the college football world, right? Because we haven't seen a team portal their way to a national championship. But if Ole Miss portals their way to an SEC championship over teams like a Georgia, over teams like a Texas, I suppose, in this discussion, that would change the game. And it's always crazy till someone does it. It's always impossible until someone does it. Hey, man can't fly. Wright brothers. Boom. Everyone's taking flights now. Shout out Delta. No one can run a 4-minute mile. Your heart will explode. Roger Bannister does it. Everyone starts doing it like it's going out of style. Like it's the cool thing to do. If Ole Miss portals their way to big-time success, people are going to change the way they look at the transfer portal. Now, we saved the most impactful one for last, and we feel this very, very strongly. Oregon has the potential to win the national championship. Nope, nothing's wrong with your podcast, nothing's wrong with your YouTube channel. We're just letting that sink in. They have the 4th best odds, currently, according to FanDuel, to win it all. And that's behind the usual suspects, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas. The difference with Oregon in those schools is those schools have all stood on top of the mountain. Like, you remember Vince Young. I know it was longer, but you remember them winning that game against USC and arguably the best college football game of all time. You remember Georgia, obviously. How could you forget? You remember Ohio State. Oregon hasn't done it. Oregon isn't that same, historic logo that those schools are. And if Oregon does win the national championship, and I think they can based on their roster, there's no holes. I love what they have at quarterback. I love their coordinators. I love Dan Lanning. I love the line of scrimmage. If they win the national championship, you want to talk about pouring fuel on an already well-lit fire? Just give the school that's well associated with Nike, almost synonymous with Nike, a national championship. The juice that would give them when it comes to acquiring talent. And I think the optics that would give a lot of players that are thinking about Oregon and have reason to go to Oregon, it would be a tidal wave. It would be an absolute tidal wave. So Oregon, from a roster level, they have the potential to do it. And if they do it, I think a lot of folks will start to reconsider the idea of going to play their college football in a place like Eugene. Because at that point, similar to what I said about Ole Miss, what you can and can't accomplish at a certain school, that narrative, that glass ceiling, that'll be shattered. And that would be dangerous for the rest of the sport. Because Dan Lanning, man, he's going to get his guys. All right, we've seen this, man. He will recruit. He will recruit like a program, and they will go add top talent. And we'll talk about that here, actually right now in this segment. But I'm just saying, give Oregon some ammo. Give Phil Knight some ammo. I don't think you want to do that. Do not think you want to do that. Little fruit punch flavor for Tuesday. You got to love it. Got to love it, man, for the biggest Tuesday of the week. Appreciate everybody getting active in the live chat. Going to get to your thoughts, questions, concerns here a little bit later in the show. But we all know this, man. June is for recruiting. July is for recruiting. Recruiting is heating up. It's on an absolute heater right now. Want to just give you some quick hitters on the latest in the world of recruiting. We had some big visits over the course of the weekend. Had a big commitment yesterday when Isaiah Gibson, former USC commit, decommitted from USC not that long ago, and it also didn't take that long for him to give his commitment to the in-state Georgia Bulldogs. And here's the thing, man. Georgia, they're up to number 2 right now in the On3 industry team recruiting rankings for 2025. Did anybody think Georgia was just going to go quietly into that good night? Like, I think before Georgia was somewhere in that 4 range or just outside that top 3. They were flirting with, like, that top 3 range, but it wasn't like the top 2, number 1 ranking we've seen Georgia have over the course of the last couple of seasons. We really think they were just going to fade. No, I don't think any of us really did. Landing Isaiah Gibson, that 5-star is massive. Watch Georgia close now. Watch them close. Watch them as we get into the fall. And this is not an intel segment. This is just a feel for it segment. I think Georgia's ability to pitch stability is always an ace when it comes closer and closer to pen meeting paper. Because you have this whole recruiting, flurry during the summer, and kids commit, kids decommit, and the Hayes Fawcett machine is just working overtime. But when it comes time for guys to make decisions, you look up at the standings, look at who's in that college football playoff discussion and conference title discussion, and consistently, Georgia is usually in there. Kirby Smart, best coach in college football right now. Pretty hard, I think, to tell that individual no. Right now, at the time of us being live, Seems to also be some confidence around 5-star in-state defensive lineman Justice Terry, so keep an eye on that. But Georgia, man, recruiting like a program, Kirby Smart doing Kirby Smart things. Who would have thought? Probably you, because you're a smart, diehard, sickle college football fan. Now, speaking of teams that have consistently recruited well, Alabama, they're under new management. Kalen DeBoer now is cooking. He's cooking, and if you follow me on the socials, you already saw my reaction to this in real time. Right now, they have 18 commits in 2025. They landed 4-star interior offensive lineman Micah DeBose over the weekend. And this is what the rest of college football does not want to happen. Because when Nick Saban retired, regardless of who Alabama had hired next, the optics for that logo were vulnerable. Not weak, not down, vulnerable. Vulnerable for somebody else to take pole position and take some of that talent that had been consistently committing to Alabama. Well, Kalen DeBoer right now, again, is crushing on the recruiting trail. Top 5 class. If they win on the field, that's going to open the floodgates. Because right now, if you're committing to Alabama, you're committing to the vision. I have to believe in some small part Kalen DeBoer is maximizing that logo. But if they go win on the field and they make the college football playoff or they win the SEC or they're in Atlanta, things get very scary for the rest of college football. Because that advantage maybe you thought you had on Alabama with their optics being vulnerable, they're not vulnerable anymore. Once Kalen DeBoer wins on the field and proves to these kids, hey, you commit to Alabama, what you wanted to accomplish under Saban, you can still accomplish here while I'm running the show. So jump on board and commit. That's dangerous for the rest of college football when they stabilize those optics. So Kalen DeBoer is cooking. Alabama is rolling. What else is new when it comes to recruiting in Tuscaloosa? Hey, look at Michigan, man. Look at Michigan. So inspirational. They're going to push for a top 10 class. That is what Steve Wiltfong said this morning on Andy Staples on 3. So another reason to subscribe to this channel. Right now, Michigan is sitting in that 14 spot. Now think about what we have known Michigan to be over the course of the last, let's just call it 5 or so years. Under Jim Harbaugh's Michigan, Wolverines, they'd recruit, but really they were more of a heavy developmental program. Like, we'll go get the OKGs, the guys that fit our system, the gritty, the grinders, the hard hat, the lunch pail. Heck, we'll take a 3-star, we don't care. And we will put him through our development machine, and he'll be an absolute stud when he hits the field. Yeah, he was a 3-star when we recruited him. He's now playing like a 5-star. We saw the big paws on that dog, and now he's eating greedy. Michigan right now, I mean, they got 2 commitments yesterday, 12 total in the class of 2025. If they recruit at a top 10 level and they pair high-level talent, better raw ingredients, and keep that high-level developmental apparatus in place, all bets are off. All bets are, I mean, delete all the Sharon Moore slander off your Twitter page if you still have time to. Like, I'm just saying, that is dangerous if Michigan is able to develop still at a top 10 level and then recruit at a top 10 level. God bless you. God bless you. Now, Oregon, they had a massive recruiting weekend this past weekend as well. They had not 1, not 2, but 3 5-star defensive backs on campus, from Trey McNutt to DJ Pickett to Jonah Williams. They also had the top wide receiver in America out there on campus in 5-star DeCorian Moore. This is not intel here, all right? This next sentence is not intel. I am fascinated to see what another year of success would do for Dan Lanning in Oregon. Because listen, Dan Lanning has proven like he's going to do what he does. We are going to go after top caliber players. We're going to go after 5-stars. You think about Oregon back in the day, and it was like, hey, maybe they'll land the 4-star guy. They're probably going to go with the 3-star guy that fits their system, the fast guy for Chip Kelly to use. But like, Dan Lanning's like, that's great. We appreciate that. It's definitely the foundation to what Oregon football has been and how we got here. But like, when they recruit 5-star guys and they stack classes like Dan Lanning is doing right now, that's how you win national championships. And so that's an impressive list of visitors. We'll see what happens in the long run. But the thing that I'm encouraged by from the Oregon fan is like, yeah, Dan Lanning is swinging a hot bat. He's swinging a corked bat with that Nike logo behind him. And like, Oregon's going to factor in, I think, for a lot of big-time players when it comes time for pen to meet paper. And they already are when it comes to how they're doing on the recruiting trail. So a lot of big-time visits, a lot of big-time action on the trail this past weekend. recruiting is starting to heat up. But the name that drew the most buzz this past weekend, the name that everybody's continuing to watch here as the recruiting calendar continues to churn right along, is what's going on with Julian Lewis. Now, Julian Lewis is a 5-star quarterback that is currently committed to USC. But the buzz right now, or the buzz, I guess, coming out of the weekend, is Colorado shot their shot. So we'll talk about that right now, but first things first, make sure you are subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. All right, you're a college football sicko. Good news, that's us too. Like, we're watching the full game, YouTube reruns at lunch instead of, whatever the sport is on. Like, we're college football diehards, recruiting, portal, games, all that. Welcome home. Subscribe so you don't miss anything. Also follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at JD Piquel. So, to get a ton of intel, also make sure you're subscribed to the On3 Recruits channel. Wilt Fong Whip Round's got intel on this. The Inside Scoop, chopping it up on this with Josh Newberg. The 5-star flex with Phillip Dukes got a great video out on this that we're actually going to bring Dukes on, I believe, on Thursday's show to chop it up with him and kind of unpack what he had to say about Julian Lewis. This morning, and on the Wilt Fong Whip Around, Steve Wiltfong has said he is leaning more towards Julian Lewis sticking with USC than flipping to another school. Insert Colorado, Auburn, whoever you want there. He's committed to USC. And to be honest, this makes a lot of sense if you commit to USC as a quarterback. I don't think there's a whole lot of explaining that has to be done for yourself. Hey, I'm a quarterback. I want to go play in the NFL. I want to give myself a chance to win the Heisman Trophy and be a first-round draft pick. Lincoln Riley's your guy. The proof is in the pudding, man. When men lie, women lie. Resumes don't typically lie unless you're a college grad and trying to get a job, in which case, we salute y'all. But, that's pretty much the case. If you want to commit to the guy who specializes in quarterbacks, you commit to Lincoln Riley. And in other cases, I suppose you commit to Steve Sarkisian. But Juju Lewis being committed to Lincoln Riley, you're in great shape. There's no denying any sense that would make. I also need to say this, too, for the USC faithful watching. Nobody is trying to flip your guy here on this show, okay? I am not hoping that Julian Lewis flips to X, Y, and Z school. That's not the business I'm in, quite frankly. The reason why we're talking about this is Julian Lewis is going through the recruiting process, taking visits. And so we're going to talk about the visits he takes. Okay, obviously you take visits. Take visits to check out a school, check out how you fit there, and potentially picture yourself playing at that school. You take the photos and the jerseys because, one, it's just a sick experience if you're a high school senior. You're taking pictures in the Auburn jersey and the Colorado jersey. It's cool. But also, if you're on staff there, part of that is you want to allow this kid to see himself in that jersey and say, maybe I could see myself running out of the tunnel out here in Boulder. Maybe I could see myself running out there, Jordan-Hare Stadium, being the quarterback. Just food for thought. So that's why we're talking about this. Now, the Colorado visit sounds like they shot their shot, man. Everything that I am reading, everything that I've heard is that Colorado put their best foot forward on this visit. And one thing that continues to come up when you talk about the Colorado visit for Julian Lewis, the city of Boulder, man, showed out. People talk a lot about that Colorado fan base and them being a little bit more, there's some new members of that Colorado fan base. And, nothing against it. Deion Sanders is your head coach. That's going to drive intrigue through the roof. More power to you. But within the city of Boulder, they made it very evident they want this dude to be their quarterback. Have to believe it didn't hurt things. Also, the fact that they had the Julian Lewis, I think it's the Precision Pass Burger. Any restaurant that says, we got a big-time commit coming to town, going to do our part, put a item on the menu for this 5-star quarterback to prove to him just how much this city is behind him, how much we want him, I think that's phenomenal. I'm all about that. That is Progrum stuff right there, through and through. T.C. Lewis is Julian Lewis's father. He talked to Phillip Dukes. Phillip Dukes asked him, hey, in one word, describe the Colorado visit. And he said, real. Again, Steve Wiltfong is saying he's going to stick with USC. As of right now, that's his lean. Not his prediction, his lean right now, I suppose. I'm just saying, Colorado did some good things, it sounds like, on this visit. Now, here's my question. I wonder if this is the recruit where Deion Sanders says, you know what? I don't really do in-home visits. But this is the kind of guy that could change a class, change the future of a program once Shedeur Sanders leaves. I'll go visit him in Carrollton, Georgia. I'll go visit him at his high school. I'll go sit down with the family and break bread if that's what it takes to get this done. That could be the ace in the hole, I think, for Deion Sanders. Curious to watch that whole thing unfold. Now, Auburn, they're also in the mix. They already had a visit with Juju Lewis. The pitch for them is obvious, right? They're close to home. Personally, schematically, I really like that fit. Seeing Julian Lewis in Hugh Freeze's system, I think, would be chef's kiss. They're well-resourced when it comes to NIL. Auburn makes a lot of sense. Auburn makes a ton of sense, so you can see that there. Now, here's where I think this gets really, really interesting. All three of these schools that I'm assuming are the key factors for him in his recruitment. USC, obviously, he's committed to. Colorado just took a visit to. And Auburn. The school's getting the most buzz around his recruitment. They all have some degree of uncertainty next to them when it comes to that 2024 season. Like the over-under win total for Auburn and USC is both at 7.5. Colorado, their over-under win total is at 5.5. There's a lot that could happen this upcoming season. And so Julian Lewis has said with our own Josh Newberg during the On3 Elite Series, he has told us, hey, I want to shut this down, my recruitment that is, before the season. So I can focus on what I need to focus on, go have the best year I can possible for my high school team. Awesome. My question is, though, with that amount of uncertainty around these different teams and what they could accomplish in 2024, how much does the 2024 season impact where Julian Lewis stands on his commitment to go play college football? Just my question, because what if USC, he's committed there right now, what if they walk into the Big Ten and it's not a good look? And again, I'm not predicting that. I'm just asking the question. What if USC walks out there, goes 7-5 again? And it looks like we got a long way to go on the line of scrimmage. It looks like maybe this is going to be a little bit of a tougher project than we had originally thought if we're USC. What if Shedeur Sanders goes out and wins the Heisman Trophy? What if Colorado goes out there and wins the Big 12? What if Auburn wins 9 football games? What if Peyton Thorne and his development under Hugh Freeze is night and day from what it was last year and that offense is humming? How much does that factor in to your commitment? I understand we want to shut it down before the season. I'm for that. I am pro focus on your senior season. But I think it's human nature with the uncertainty around these teams can make for an interesting 2024. Now, it also needs to be noted, what if Miller Moss goes out there and wins the Heisman Trophy? What if USC lights it up in the Big Ten? That's also a potential variable in place. So for my good folks out there in Los Angeles screaming at your podcast or screaming at your YouTube TV, that's also in play. I think that also probably helps solidify Julian Lewis's commitment, in my opinion. It's not intel, just talking this through here. So what happens there, we'll see. Again, Julian Lewis is committed to USC. Committed to USC. Steve Wiltfong says he leans stick more than flip. But the beautiful part about recruiting, man, we are going to get to see where pen meets paper on National Signing Day. That's one we'll talk about here all the way through the line. All the way through the line. Speaking of running through the line here, if you're watching live, subscribe to the channel and like the video. We appreciate y'all so much for that. One more segment here, and we're going to get some of y'all's thoughts here in the live chat in just a matter of moments. So let's talk about this here. There seems to be a lot of division on Dabo Swinney. Like, he is a lightning rod when it comes to conversation, as my friend Jake Crane would say. Now, obviously, Dabo Swinney, really good coach. I don't think you can deny that. If you do want to deny that, I think Dabo Swinney probably point to those 2 national championship trophies he has and says, you still think that? Still don't think I know what I'm doing? I digress. Now, the doubt around him and the reason why there's cause for some folks to have objections to how he does things is he has been, in one way, slow to embrace what modern college football is right now, which is the transfer portal. Pretty much said, hey, don't do it. It is what it is. There was this thought early on, too, that Clemson was maybe a little bit slower to get on the NIL train than some other schools were. It is what it is. The real cause for concern, I think, the reason why these discussions have a little bit more juice to them is because Clemson has slowly but surely had a little bit of a taper off when it comes to what they do on the field. There was a time where Clemson pretty much had a timeshare in the college football playoff. Now, they missed it the last few years. And where I stand on Dabo Swinney is I'm not really frustrated at Dabo Swinney so much as I am frustrated for Dabo Swinney, if that makes sense. Like, do I wish he would adapt and use the portal? 100%. But at the exact same time, I think what he's saying is true when he says most guys aren't good enough to play here with us at Clemson. And that's part of the frustration is, like, the roster itself, I think, is already really good. Like, Clemson already recruits, for the most part, at a pretty high level. Now, it fluctuates year to year, and that's the game. You charge it to that. But, like, Clemson, if they were to use the portal, I think Dabo Swinney is a good enough recruiter. I think he's created a culture and a place that's attractive enough to where if they opened it up and said, hey, we'll go take 4 or 5 transfers, I think they'd crush it. And to be honest, I think that would make the difference in a couple of key spots. So I'm frustrated more so that Dabo Swinney is sitting on what I believe is a winning hand in a lot of ways. He's just a few cards short of having that totally winning deck, if you will. And we talked about this earlier in the show, but like the transfer portal, the reason why I'd love to see Dabo Swinney use it is because it would increase his margin for error when it comes to what they do on the recruiting trail. Like right now, they're getting beat by teams that are maybe not recruiting as well as Clemson, but they're using the portal to supercharge the roster, and maybe they recruit at like a 75% hit rate, but they use the portal to help make up whatever ground they lost. Where if you're Clemson, if you're not using the portal, you have less margin for error, and you got to recruit at like a 90-95% hit rate to compete with those other supercharged rosters. So for me, it's like, if I'm Dabo Swinney, help me. You know what I'm saying? Like, help me help this roster to get to where we want to go. Now, I will say this too. Dabo Swinney, skin's on the wall. He knows his football team. He's doing what he wants to do. Like, who am I to tell Dabo Swinney how to run his football team? This is just one guy with a mic and his opinion. I think the ironic part about the Dabo Swinney divide, though, you have one group of people yelling, man, I wish Dabo Swinney would use the transfer portal. I wish Dabo would use the portal. Then you have that same group of people, though, that are yelling, the transfer portal is ruining college football. I'm just like, well, how does that work? The portal can't be evil, and then also you say that Dabo Swinney needs to use the portal. Like, if you're a college football traditionalist through and through, like to the most extreme degree, then Dabo Swinney's your guy. Like, he is the guy that is sticking to the way he has done things all the way to the bitter end, from what we can tell. Now, personally, I like Dabo. I'm a big Dabo Swinney fan, and that kind of got lost in the discussion over the course of the last few weeks. Like, I'm a big Dabo Swinney fan. I love that he involves faith in his college football program, full transparency. I love that he's culture-centric. He emphasizes that. That's been something he has leaned on throughout the course of his career. I love that he's authentic. Like, there's a lot of people that are like, Dabo's so cringy. He does this on TikTok. I don't care. I really don't care. Because one, that has nothing to do with what you are as a head coach and your ability to win football games. Two, that just says to me that you're fine with being yourself. You're not worried about how you're perceived on social media and all this. Like, you're comfortable in your own skin. You're confident. And I personally am a fan of that. Now, here's, I think, one thought that maybe we haven't considered all the way. Because we continue to think about Dabo and Clemson in this thought process of, well, they got to win X amount of football games. Like, that is the end-all, be-all. They got to get back to the college football playoff. And I think some portion of that is true. Like, Dabo and his job is to win football games. His job is to be the very best head coach that he can be in college football and equip Clemson for the highest degree of success possible. What if Dabo's not looking at this just from a football perspective? Like, what if Dabo is truly leaning into his way of doing things because he thinks it's bigger than football and that's the way that he wants to do things, that's the way he's going to go out? Nick Brake's a big movie buff, and one of my favorite movies from one of his favorite directors, Martin Scorsese. Scorsese, Nick? I think? Okay, got the nod. Scorsese. Shutter Island. I probably should have told you the movie. I didn't really tell you the movie, so that hurts. Shutter Island. There's a scene at the end of Shutter Island where Leo DiCaprio looks at his buddy and he says, you know, is it better to live as a monster or to die as a good man? And I'm not here telling you Dabo Swinney's going to die as a good man, but I think that there's something to be said for him being okay with, hey, if it doesn't work, if this is the end of the road and like Clemson never reaches more success than we've had in the last couple of years when we were winning national championships, if that was the peak, I can sleep fine at night because I'm doing what I think is right. I am doing the college football equivalent in this specific, I guess, kind of grim scenario of dying as a good man. Now, I understand it's not life and death, but I think that's the approach Dabo maybe is taking with this whole thing. Yes, they want to win games. They want to win championships, both conference and national titles, but I think that maybe is a thought exercise worth considering. So there's two obvious ways forward here. There's two things that are going to happen. Dabo will either secede and adopt the portal and use the portal to make his football team better. And full transparency, again, I think that his culture is probably good enough to where you could add 4 or 5 guys, bring them on board if you vetted them correctly, and you can have a lot of success. I think that makes a ton of sense, and I would love to see them do that. Or says, you know what? I'm not using the portal. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm gonna go out on my terms. If we don't have success, so be it, but I am not using the portal because I don't believe in that being our way to go forward. Okay, cool. Perception of how correct he is in either of those decisions is 110% going to be based in how many football games Clemson wins going forward. Right? Like we all think we know what's best for Dabo. We all think that we're like these GMs in college football and we know exactly what's supposed to happen to win football games. And we have opinions, of course, and I'm grateful to be able to share mine for a living, but like at the end of the day, it is a results-oriented business. Whether Dabo Swinney recruits exclusively at the JUCO level or whether he takes only high school players and plays all freshmen, like whatever they do on the field is how we will determine how good of a decision either one of those is when it comes to the portal or not using the portal. And I've been vocal. I would love to see Dabo use the portal. I think that would be a positive thing for his team. I think it would help them compete at a higher level in the ACC. I think it would keep them from being passed by teams in the ACC, as we've started to see. But here, this has to be said now, and I'll be eating my words if it happens. But if that pendulum of conversation swings back the other direction because Dabo Swinney starts winning at the high level again, let's start with week 1 against Georgia. If they beat Georgia week 1, they go win the ACC. That discussion is going to get very, very uncomfortable around Dabo Swinney and all we said about him. He needs to use the portal. He needs to do this. Not if he wins at a high level. Now, again, the margin for error, it shrinks. Probably got to have a higher hit rate on the recruiting trail than they do right now. But I'm just saying, don't be surprised if that pendulum swings back the other direction and Dabo ends up being right. But being right or being wrong, it's all going to come down to what they do on the field. And that's my 2 cents on that matter. But yeah, man, I mean, I appreciate the way Dabo does things. I think he kind of gets a bit of a bad rap in the punchline culture of social media and things like that and him being cringy. I don't care about him being cringy. I don't. And you shouldn't. I mean, being like, come on. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. All right, you know what does matter, though, is what y'all think and what y'all have to say. So let's go to that right now and unpack some of your thoughts, feelings, concerns with that man, Nick Break. Nick, what's going on, baby?
Man, what's up? I've got 4 questions. There's so many good ones today. I've got it down to 4. Took a while to think about them.
Let's go.
First one, Browns LLC. I'm going to rephrase this a little bit. It says, do you think Travis Hunter wins the Heisman? I'm going to say, do you think Travis Hunter can win the Heisman, and what has to happen for that to go on?
That's a good tweak to that question. I like that, Nick. Mm-hmm. What has to happen, he has to put up big numbers offensively. Colorado, I'll say this, they got to win the Big 12. They got to win the Big 12. You got to be in the college football playoff. And I don't think that a team from the Big 12 is getting an at-large bid just because that conference is so brutal. For Colorado, want a Heisman winner, whether it's Shedeur, whether it's Travis, he's got to put up big numbers offensively, probably put up solid numbers defensively as well, a couple of big-time moments, get a pick here and there, like, you know, the usual stuff you would expect if you're going to win the Heisman Trophy. And got to do it in a nationally televised fashion. And that shouldn't be a problem for Colorado. I mean, they are the show whenever they're rolling. My concern with this Heisman Trophy take around a Colorado player is if it's Shedeur or it's Travis, if Colorado has success to the degree where we're talking about one of those guys being in the Heisman Trophy discussion, I'd be a little bit concerned about them splitting votes to get either of them to actually win the award. Not to say it hasn't happened. In 2020, we saw Devontae Smith win the Heisman with Mac Jones being his quarterback. So, take that with a grain of salt. But that's going to be, I think, really interesting to watch here going forward.
Okay.
Hey, Nick, let's get to one or two more. EA dropped their top 10 toughest places to play. Actually, top 25, but 10 on this graphic. So let's get to these questions. Then I want to react to this in just a second here as well.
Okay. So let's do this.
I love it.
Everyone who asks questions, I'm sorry. We'll get to them tomorrow.
That's on me. Hey, that's on me. That's not on Nick. That's on me. And also, you know what? That's on EA. How about that? That's on EA. Let's make them carry some of that.
I'll get this done quick. Day says, does Miami have their quarterback on the roster for 2025?
Ooh. How about that? Do they have their quarterback on the roster for 2025? For the sake of this discussion, I'll say yes. I think Shannon Dawson, great OC. I think they're going to continue to recruit well. They've got some high-profile guys already on the roster as well. So we'll keep an eye on Miami. I'll say yes as we sit here in late June.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, I know that's a little bit uncommon for me, but yeah, short-winded. How about that?
Yeah.
What else we got on here, Big Nick? Anything else?
Oh, I thought you were gonna.
Oh, I thought we had one more. Am I tripping?
Oh no, we can. I do have them. We have a lot more.
I love it. Let's do one more, and we can get to that.
Okay, let me get this pulled up, guys.
Amazing.
This is from Happen. Once I can find it, that is.
No, you're good. I caught you off guard there. I'm making sure I mentioned the right quarterback that they have on the roster. Judd Anderson, that's who it is, from Miami. He was a highly touted kid coming out of high school. He's on the roster at Miami. Curious to see what he is long term, but he could be the guy for you after Cam Ward departs.
Last question, and again, if you asked one, there's a lot of good ones. Come back tomorrow. We'll get to them. What's the most underrated game this season that could have huge implications for the rest of the year?
Ooh.
In my mind, it's Tennessee OU Week 4.
Dude, that's going to be game day could be at that one. Like, if you're looking for storylines, that's probably the game you're looking at. A slept-on one that we have mentioned on the show, I believe it's Week 3. Yeah, you got Friday the 13th. Arizona going to Kansas State. Now, both Big 12 opponents. I think this game is one of those that was scheduled before the whole realignment saga happened. So it's a game played in conference but won't count towards conference standings. The reason why it's interesting is because I think, again, what I just said, in the Big 12, I don't think you're having an at-large bid to get into the college football playoff. So while this won't count towards the Big 12 standings, a loss will impact your college football playoff standings, even with us going to this 12-team model. So that game, Week 3 for Kansas State, it's going to be very big. Arizona's obviously a wagon. I believe they bring back like 66% production from a roster that won 10 games a year ago. I know it's a new coach. Kansas State still has to play Oklahoma State after that. Arizona, I believe they have to turn around. Yeah, they turn around, have a bye week, and then they go to Utah and then Texas Tech. So, that's one of those got-to-have-it games, I think, to keep your mulligan as you move forward throughout the rest of the season. It's so early to where you don't want to drop one early and then hurt your chances to get in the college football playoff with that loss maybe dragging you down. But, Nick, I appreciate you rolling with the punches there, brother. This is a little bit of no-huddle action here from us. Huh? I'm on the Twitter sphere right now pulling up the toughest places to play. And if we have that lower there, let's throw that up and we can just kind of react to this in real time. So my top 5, if you watched our video yesterday in a one-off capacity, it's on the YouTube channel. So check it out. Subscribe here. College football every single day. A lot of college football 25 talk if you've been tuned in. Here's the super transparent part of this. A lot of these stadiums I have not yet had the privilege to go to. Have not. However, there is a reputation for a lot of these places that precede themselves. And so we use that, plus watching broadcasts, plus other people that have been there and what they have to say. And we put together a top 5 list of, at number 5, we had Memorial Stadium from Clemson. At number 4, we had Boone Pickens from Oklahoma State. At number 3, we had Autzen. At number 2, we had the Swamp. At number 1, we had Death Valley. Now, I just want to briefly run through where they had some of those teams. They had Death Valley, Tiger Stadium, at 3. At 3. Now, again, I haven't been there. So, who am I to disagree vehemently with these rankings? But I've just heard so much about Death Valley at night, and it's been called Death Valley because of how deafening it is to be in that stadium. A little surprised. Wasn't a little bit higher on the list. Kyle Field is number 1. Never been to Kyle Field. It's massive, so I could see that being a difficult place to play. Bryant-Denny Stadium is number 2. I'm a little bit biased against this because the only game I've been to in Bryant-Denny Stadium was the game against Texas, where Texas walked in there, went gangbusters, and won that game by 10 points. So, we have a smaller sample size when it comes to discerning Bryant-Denny Stadium. Let's go through our list, though. Memorial Stadium for Clemson, we had it 5. I just said, nice try. Try number 12. Not even the top 10, so they just sunned us there. Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, the Swamp, I cannot believe it's not higher on this list. They got it at number 10. We had it in our top 3. I've seen so many teams walk in there and just absolutely fall apart. Surprised that's not higher on the list. Boone Pickens Stadium is what we had at 4. Y'all, they got Boone Pickens Stadium. Let's see if I can find it here. This is the beauty of doing real-time YouTube. Did I not make the top 25? Tell me it made the top 25. Boone Pickens. I'm not seeing it. All right, well, they just said Boone Pickens Stadium, nice try, I guess. If I missed it, that's on me, and I'll go back and correct it after the live show, I suppose. But I do not see Boone Pickens Stadium. Yeah, okay, well, EA said we'll take your Boone Pickens Stadium, and you can take that home and go put it in your dresser, I guess. All right, so they didn't have Boone Pickens Stadium even in their top 25. That is surprising to me because I've seen teams, same thing we said with the Swamp. It's not the biggest stadium in the country, but Boone Pickens Stadium is one of those that, they're on top of you. They got the paddles. They're banging them against the wall. The student section or the stadium period, the crowd's really close to the sideline. Was surprised they didn't get some more love. Austin Stadium, we had it 3. They got it at 11. So we're getting dunked on there. I'd heard from multiple people that it was the loudest stadium in America. So not the biggest, but one of the loudest. Thought that would be higher up on the list. And obviously we already talked about the Swamp, talked about Tiger Stadium. At number 2, we had the Swamp. Yeah, so that's our 5. I cannot believe Boone Pickens was not on this list. Some other notable other stadiums that were on there. Beaver Stadium at number 6. Totally get that. Totally get it. For me, it was just hey, the wideout. That seems like the one-off that makes it really tough to play in. How tough is it when it's a noon kick and you got Iowa rolling into town or you got Wisconsin rolling into town? I don't know. Now, Iowa was the wideout game last year, so maybe that's a poor example. Camp Randall at number 7. This is one that I definitely could have seen us putting higher on the list. When Jump Around comes on, that's a place that's all right, this place is bumping. So Camp Randall, I like to see it in the top 10. Jordan Hare from Auburn at 14. If we had done a top 10, we probably would have had Jordan Hare at 6. They got him at 14. That's crazy. To me, it's a little bit crazy. Other notable teams on this list, you got Davis Wade from Mississippi State at 25. Albertson Stadium, the blue turf at Boise State, right around 24. And one more we'll mention here, Neyland. Got a lot of Tennessee fans that watch this show, right at 13. So the top 10 for them was Kyle Field at 1. Probably should have led with this, but Kyle Field is number 1. Bryant-Denny Stadium for Alabama is number 2. LSU and Tiger Stadium's at 3. Ohio Stadium for Ohio State, number 4. Stanford Stadium at 5 for Georgia. Beaver Stadium at 6. Camp Randall, Wisconsin at 7. Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium at number 8 for Oklahoma. 9 is Doak Campbell in Florida State. Haven't been there. Would love to go. Could see that at number 9. And the Swamp, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, is at number 10. That's their top 10. But go check out that full list, obviously, on the top 25 from EA Sports is on their website. And Andy Staples, may be out right now if you're watching live, has a full list himself of toughest places to play in the game. He's going to compare that to their list as well. So lock in over there. But hey, man, we're back on the air tomorrow. Bit of a long show. We'll get some more live chat for you tomorrow, and we'll call our shot in the ACC. So excited to hear from y'all on your shots you're calling in the SEC. But we'll talk about the ACC tomorrow. A lot going on. You could tell at the end there we're kind of having a little broken play, a little ad-lib action. We got EA coming out with their top 25 toughest places to play. We're reacting. We're trying to find Boone Pickens Stadium with no success. To me, again, a little bit crazy, but it is what it is. I was so surprised by that. But EA, man, I'll tell you what, they put so much into this game, I trust them implicitly with those rankings. So I got to go back to the drawing board, do some reflecting, some looking in the mirror with my tough places to play. So I'm telling you what, man, college football 25 on EA Sports is going to be sensational. Cannot wait. Hey, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all being dialed into this show. Y'all make it go. Follow me on the socials at JD Pickell, Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. For Nick Brake producing the whole show, for myself, JD Pickell, we are going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all.